everyone, and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast. My name is Andy Spiteri, and as always, joined by Dakota Lasky. Dak, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm good, Andy. Just been hanging out lately, still enjoying the quarantine. I've been playing Valorant lately. I got into the closed beta last week, so I've been enjoying that a lot, and playing some Rocket League, and yeah, just kind of going through the motions. Every day is becoming a blur. And it's really crazy how the view from my window is exactly the same every single day. So I'm doing good.
I was telling some of the guys on my Zelda podcast a couple months ago. My townhouse was being renovated, so we had scaffolding around or whatever. And in order to do that, we had a shed in our backyard, and they had to completely dismantle it to get there. So my backyard right now is literally debris from the shed after the scaffolding is gone. So the view out my window, it ain't much better, unfortunately. Fortunately for us, though, we hit 100 followers over on Twitter.
Woo! Yes.
Woo!
Let's go.
So first and foremost, thank you to everybody that retweeted.
Yes.
There were a lot of really diehard fans of ours that were just like, you guys need to follow these guys. They produce great content. And we saw every one of those retweets. We see them all. I read them all. Thank you so much. We hit 100 followers, so we're gonna give you that bonus show, and it is gonna drop at some point this week. I'm thinking maybe later in the week. I don't want to give you an exact date, an exact promise, but it is gonna happen. We have tons of questions. By the time that you're listening to this episode, I think that you'll have enough time to ask us a question over on Twitter at Omega Metroid Pod. And we're gonna do our best to answer every question that we get so far, and there have been some really great ones. And in fact, if we didn't answer your question, it's probably because we saw it and we're just like, damn, this is gonna be like a whole show. So we're gonna save this one. So yeah, thank you guys so much for spreading the word about the Omega Metroid Pod and for helping us achieve our goal of 100 followers. Ask us your questions at Omega Metroid Pod. I can't wait for that. Q&A episodes are some of the funnest and most just like fluid conversation episodes that you can do in a podcast. I'm really looking forward to that.
Well, I'm just glad people haven't gotten sick of us yet. And I agree that we got a lot of good questions. I'm looking forward to all of them. And you're right, we got a bunch that we're going to do full episodes for. We already talked in depth a little bit on some of them. So there was a list, and I was like, which one of these are my favorite? I ended up just listing all of them. So we're definitely going to get to all of them. Definitely give us some more questions, though, because we'll answer as many questions as we can. So the more the merrier. And I can't wait to get to that one either, because I've never done a Q&A podcast show. Like when I did like my Smash Bros. Podcast like way back in the day, I never actually did like a Q&A. I just was like, hey, you're all listening. I don't really and didn't take any questions. So I am looking forward to that, because it's nice that we'll have like a huge different diverse plate of questions that aren't just like one theme or one necessarily topic, I'm looking forward to jump around and get to some topics we haven't covered yet, and also some stuff that might be a little controversial and also fun to talk about. So yeah, looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, and like you can ask your silly Metroid questions, your serious ones, hit us with them.
Ridley
selfishly
questions, please. Let me get some.
Yeah, if you got Ridley questions, Dak probably has like a whole show's worth of one answer for you right there.
Absolutely.
Selfishly, I love Q&A questions because we don't have to do anything. Like our listeners will give us all the work that we need to do, and all we need to do is prattle
don't
off.
tell them, bro. They're gonna
yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, there's still a lot of work that we need to do.
Figured it out.
Yeah, whoops. One cool thing before we get going here. The Omega Metroid Pod is now available on Spotify. Ooh. So if you are a Spotify podcast listener and that's your preferred method for listening, you can definitely do that right now. We've linked the Spotify account in the show notes on Podbean, so you can make sure that you are subbed over there. And new episodes will be released weekly there, so that's kind of cool. Anybody listening to my Zelda podcast, the Champions Cast, is finally over on Spotify as well. That only took like 105 episodes, but we finally made it, so we're there. Omega Metroid is doing a little bit better. We're a little bit ahead of the curve. We only lasted until episode 8, but we finally made it.
No, it's
all
cool.
Right.
I think it's awesome. I'm sorry, I just got to jump in because I think it's awesome that we're on Spotify. And let us know if you're listening on Spotify. I think it's really cool. So yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, actually. It is pretty cool to look over and see like you know, the Omega Metroid logo on Spotify. It's kind of a, it reminds me of the first time I ever saw us on iTunes. It's
Hmm.
just a cool feeling. So Dak, I have been playing, and we're gonna get into a great episode here all about 2D Metroid. But before we do,
Okay.
I just wanted to talk to you about a game that I've been playing. One of the most underrated Metroidvanias to ever grace a console. Do you know what that is?
Uh,
Resident Evil
oh
2,
yeah. Yes.
the remake. I'm a big Resident Evil fan, but for whatever reason, I waited to get on board the Resident Evil 2 train. I don't know why, I just kind of did, but I finally picked it up, had some time to kill, and I was like, you know what? I love this game. I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna play it. And man, like it's so good, but the reason that it's so good is just because this is a classic Metroidvania game. And nobody really ever talks about how the Resident Evil games are like really those are Metroidvanias. Like they have all of the same properties. Like you get item A that takes you to item B. You get item B, it lets you progress a little bit further in section C. You know, you find something in section C which will let you progress further in section A. It's like this is vintage Metroidvania gameplay. So I'm not sure why we never talk about Resident Evil as a Metroidvania game, and I'm talking about like the early ones, of course. But man, I played it, and I had a really great time with it. It was really it scratched the itch, and it kind of reminded me that like okay, Metroidvania, you know, isn't necessarily a 2D side-scrolling like Metroid-ish platformer. It can take on many different shapes, many different sizes. You were kind of saying that you hadn't really played any of the Resident Evils, right?
Oh yeah, see that's the thing is that I am not great when it comes to horror, right? So like I like sci-fi horror to a degree. I can deal with aliens, obviously, Metroid or like, but like Resident Evil was something that scared me as a kid. So I played like the one on N64. I think the first one it was. I played Resident Evil 4 because that was kind of a meme, and like I played it with my friends, so it wasn't as scary. And I had the chainsaw GameCube controller. But yeah, so I'm very like I don't really know much at all about Resident Evil, and but I will say that I've never heard anyone compare Resident Evil to Metroid at all. So, um, yeah, I didn't really expect you to say Resident Evil. In fact, even though you let me know that that was the game you were going to talk about before we started recording, you still brought it up, and I wasn't sure what you were going to say. Yeah, because what really constitutes a Metroidvania game. It seems to you that like that at least in your perspective, which I definitely agree with, a lot of it certainly incorporates that progression of getting one item that locks you to a new area that gets you another item that gets you more progression and so on and so forth. That it seems that game definitely has.
Yeah, and it's done really well. And like, you know, I wouldn't compare it to Metroid per se, but like I
Metroidvania, yeah.
compare yeah, like the gameplay definitely like, you know, you get the key on one side of the police station, which lets you open up three extra rooms on the other side of the police station, which gives you an up like it's just like very well done and very laid out. And like I don't know, I was having an epiphany while I was playing this, and I was like, this is some classic Metroidvania stuff right here, and I think that's why I like it so much, and I liked it so much back in the day. I agree with you though. I'm playing it with I've been playing it on the couch. My fiance's been watching me, and she's like you. She like every time a zombie moves, she just jumps up
Yeah,
and screams at the top of her
yeah,
lungs.
that's me.
Um, so I finished two, and I was just like, okay, well I got to get three now. So I picked up Nemesis, and that game is even more intense. But that's another like that's another great Metroidvania game. I can't recommend those enough. If you guys are fans of Metroidvanias and you know you're down with horror, these are great games, and I think that you know people kind of sleep on them, especially in the last couple of years, because like the last few Resident Evil games have been kind of dicey in terms of quality, like hit or miss.
Hmm.
But this was really good. So that was my little spiel. I just wanted to get that out there and see maybe if anyone else had made that similar Metroidvania Resident Evil connection, because I'm having a blast.
Well, I definitely want to try the remakes because they look really cool and a lot of fun. And I think now, like I get a little more, it's a little more fun when you get scared playing a game now. I've grown up a little bit. That being said, it's still a little scary, a little spooky for me. But I want to try it out, and I've heard a lot of good things about the new Resident Evil remake. Or they've done one or two now. I don't know how
Two
two
now,
now. Yeah,
yeah,
I've
two.
heard good things about both of them. At least Resident Evil, the first one they did. So yeah, I want to check them out, and that's a cool connection you made. I want to let us know if anyone else made that, because like I said, you're the first person that I've actually heard say that. So
Yeah, it just it struck me while I was playing it, and I thought that it was cool. Let's talk about some Metroid though.
Yes.
And I guess first and foremost, we had a lot of really good feedback from our episode last week. Of course, we had Ryan from Metroid Database on, so we thank him for coming on and lending us his expertise. As you and I were talking about before the show started, the dude's been around the Metroid scene for forever, so he's probably forgotten more than we know
Right.
about Metroid. So yeah, I had a lot of really good feedback for that. We've kind of been focusing a lot on Metroid Prime 4, and rightfully so, and where we want the series to go. But maybe it's time that we shift our attention over to 2D Metroid, the classic kind of style that I grew up with,
Right.
for sure, in Metroid and Super Metroid and stuff like that. Um, and you were kind of talking. You're like, yeah, I want to put together a show about 2D Metroid because we haven't spent a lot of time about it. And we ended up asking ourselves some really interesting questions, which we're going to kind of debate and share with you guys. So we want everybody listening to let us know too. But I think at the core of our discussion was like, how does a 2D Metroid evolve or like stay relevant, or just how does a 2D Metroid in 2020 look and feel? So that's kind of going to be what we're getting to here. And so I guess let's just dive right in. Dak, I don't know if you had any time to kind of put pen to paper or think about this, but like we kind of talked about what new features, gameplay additions that we would want in like a 2D Metroid to kind of bring it up to speed with some of its other modern contemporaries. Is there anything that you can think of that like basically would just help 2D Metroid evolve?
Well, when I originally thought about this, I'm thinking obviously the last 2D Metroid we got was Samus Returns, and thinking, is that a good direction for 2D Metroid? And I thought it was. I think a lot of things that Samus Returns did was really good, and I want to see in further Metroid games. Like, how the game looks. I think the game looks really good on the 3DS. I think a kind of game like that would look really good on the Switch. Probably look even better. And I think some of the new upgrades they've kind of made to the gameplay, they haven't made like exploration like that same kind of shoot every pixel on the wall kind of affair that we all have kind of love or hate at times. But I kind of like how they've given a little more advancement to what like Samus can do as an individual outside of just like beams and suit upgrades. So things like that were kind of like piquing my interest. Like what exactly did like Samus Returns do right? Like maybe what was it missing, and what could I look for more? And I definitely think, at least from the 2D perspective, that it really needs to. I know I've never been like a graphics over gameplay kind of person, right? And I think the majority of people agree. It's obviously mostly about gameplay when you play video games. But I really do think what's very important for like the next 2D Metroid, if it's on the Switch, it has to really look gorgeous. And I really hope they continue with that like 2.5D kind of perspective they did with Samus Returns. But I also want them to keep that kind of cinematic, like not super crazy cinematic, but I like with Samus Returns where it was a modest amount of cinematics they added, like with the melee counter, with like some of the fights, like with the Ridley. We can talk about like the Ridley fight, right? Like because it's been out for a while, but like, yeah, okay, spoilers, but the stuff like that where I feel like the perspective needs to change often. One thing that I liked about when Other M came out, and I hate to give this game praise, but the perspective would change often, which gave the game a kind of a very dynamic feel. When you go back to like older 2D Metroids, one of the things that they don't have because of the time period they came out in. They aren't a very dynamic visual experience a lot of the time. Like they are, obviously they can be very complex and in that kind of way. But in terms of like perspective, you're looking at the same perspective all the time. I like that in newer games we're getting like shifts in perspective to give you more information, to make things a little more exciting, more actiony, more dramatic. I really would love to see more of that. So I think Samus Returns did that really well. And I know like I would like to talk about eventually like the melee counter, for example. Does that have a place in Metroid? I liked that they added and kept that kind of thing from Other M. Like it had the finishing move kind of feel. Because that's the kind of character that Samus at least is to me. Like she's like not just gonna shoot you down, she'll beat the hell out of you, right? Like she's an absolute badass. So I think she should have that kind of close quarters proficiency outside of just like bombs, for example, or something like that, to keep things a little more physical too. So I like the dynamic kind of way that Samus Returns approached Metroid, and didn't just do a safe. It was kind of safe in a lot of ways, but in a lot of
Hmm.
ways it wasn't, because it didn't just do like a flat kind of 2D thing. It took from like the newer Rayman games, for example. I feel real, even though those were 2D, right? Those felt so dynamic. If they did like a real 2D Metroid like that, it'd be really cool. But then again, the perspective didn't really change on those games either. I really like that Metroid, at least Metroid games, could really, even if they're going to stay a 2D perspective for the most part, the shifts in perspective to kind of make the visual experience a little more dynamic was cool for me. And Samus Returns, I like to see more of that.
Yeah, I agree. It's actually you brought up a point, and it's funny that you said that because I was going to bring it up, and I had written it down, and I kind of thought that it was maybe a um, a kind of a passe point, but since you said it, I feel like maybe it has some weight now. I agree with you. I'm not like a graphics guy, but I wrote down like if the next 2D Metroid has to look pristine, like it has to just be gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be graphically on par with you know on par with the best looking Switch games. And kind of a game that came to my mind when I was thinking about this was actually Retro Studios working on Donkey Kong
Yeah.
and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze in particular,
Mm-hmm.
because that is a gorgeous 2D platformer game. And I was like, you need the same level of care given to Metroid. I think you need to bring out all the bells and whistles for it. You need to bring out like voice acting. You need to bring out just
Yeah. 100%.
dynamic graphics.
Agreed.
You need to make it look like $1 million, and I think that that's a big way that this game can stick out. I don't know, like I was kind of thinking, and I was just like, okay, well, like obviously, 2D Metroid, its latest evolution was Samus Returns, and I agree with you. I love Samus Returns. I think that both, I think both Samus Returns and AM2R are like I think they're both awesome. They both have their merits, but in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like the style of Metroid, I think I like Samus Returns a little bit more, just because it's like it looks like more of an evolution, whereas like AM2R is just really, it's like really a nostalgia dive,
Yeah.
and I think it's time for Metroid to move on past that. But then and so I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, well, like obviously, I think anybody playing 2D Metroid is probably a fan of that classic 2D gameplay that has been around since Super Metroid or whatever. So I don't know how much we would actually want to really tinker around with and change, but I do think that there is room to definitely evolve. You brought up the melee counters. I think that they should go even further with that. Actually, I really think that those were great
Yeah. I think they're
in
cool.
Samus Returns.
Yeah.
And like you could I don't know, like maybe depending on like which kind of enemy you're fighting, you could maybe even have like some of those action time sequences, kind of like Resident Evil 4ish. Actually, speaking of, where like maybe you're fighting a Metroid or something like that, he's got you in an attack, and if you can nail the action time sequences, you can get out or something like that. I don't know, something to like show and make it seem like it's more of like this drag down brawl than just like peppering people with missiles. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely think that that has its place, like particularly in Ridley fights. I love that like those are just like there's not usually like a ton of strategy. It's mostly just like the shoot 'em up brawl between you and Ridley,
Mm-hmm.
which I really love. But yeah, I do think that I would like to see more melee counters and like kind of like unorthodox stuff like that. Like maybe you can do something different with bombs. Like maybe you can use them for something other than just like blowing up spots and walls or something. I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of room to play with that. One thing that and Samus Returns did this, but one thing that I think is just like absolutely, needs to happen in the next 2D Metroid would be like they really have to have a good like transport system, like a good way to get you from point A to point B without having to travel across the map. I myself
Mm.
like having to go and get lost in the world and stuff like that, but there is for the modern player, I just don't. I think you have to have a good infrastructure of like quick travel because I think that's what the modern player expects.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Because on one hand, I feel like it's like it's kind of like a shortcut. It's like, yeah, like people don't want to have to go all the way back, but like that's kind of part of the game, like the backtracking and having to go back,
Hmm.
and that's how you find those things you might not have been able to access previously, because you go back and we're like, oh yeah, I remember this. I can go and take care of this now. I have the super missile. I have this or that, whatever. I think it kind of loses that because it also like it loses that kind of like feel of isolation. I think too, where you're like, oh yeah, I could just easily get over to this other place, no danger at all, because I'm just gonna warp right over there, no big deal. Whereas like if I need to in another game get to a really far part of the map and I don't have so much health or whatever, I know it's gonna be a little bit of a trek, a little bit of a challenge to get through because I have a lot of enemies, so there's a lot of distance. On the other hand, I guess if people want that, and the game's being made for the consumer, and today's consumer wants fast travel. I mean, okay, I don't know. Personally, I don't think it necessarily needs to be in the game. I don't know if anyone's gonna all of a sudden start buying Metroid because there's fast travel in it. And I don't see how it really makes the game more fun because I feel like it kind of feels a little cheap if I can just fast. If there's a couple like one or two like specific like teleporters for like that makes sense in the game or the story or whatever, in a situation I can jump over to one part of the map or the other, that's fine. But like just to have that as a feature overall that's like accessible in general, I don't know if I would want that.
I mean, like, I don't know if I would want that necessarily either, but I think you have to have it.
You think?
Is
I don't
basically
know,
what I'm
like
saying.
if you advertise fast travel or someone sees fast travel, you think people would be like, whoa, 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 hold the
Well,
presses,
okay, but hold
hold
on.
the presses. We gotta play this game now. I can fast travel. Is
So
that a
I
killer
mean,
feature?
I kind of liken it to like Zelda Breath of the Wild, right? Where like you can fast travel to any tower in that game. There's multiple towers and there's multiple shrines,
Yeah,
but it doesn't take away from the experience necessarily. So like
I guess
I
that's
just think
true.
that players have grown to expect that, and I think that you need to have that. Now, like on the same hand, I think that in order for a new 2D Metroid to like, because any 2D Metroid is going to be on the Switch, like that's just kind of how it is.
Yeah,
Um, I think that if you are releasing a like full price to full retail price 2D Metroid game, your map has to be massive. Like it's got to be huge. Like a
yeah.
game that kind of comes to mind in comparison is Hollow Knight, which is actually kind of like a cool aesthetic actually that maybe Metroid could borrow a little bit from because there's some pretty like creepy looking areas in there. But like that has a huge map, and I'm thinking like, okay, like that you've got to make your map really big in order to sell a 2D Metroid. Like you got to tell your players that like you can really get lost in this world. I think that's going to be the big feature for it. Samus Returns isn't quite the game in that sense because like you're really only like you're only progressing downwards.
Yeah.
You're kind of going side to side, but it's not like this sprawling interconnected world a la Super Metroid or Fusion or anything like that. So I think that's another selling point that you really have to have in order for a 2D Metroid to like work. I mean, it's not necessarily an evolution. It's just like I feel like it's just something that you need to present if you're going to present this modern 2D Metroid.
Well, like I said, I'm okay with points of like fast travel and like if they were a little like if they weren't that common. But I wouldn't want it because I feel like in Breath of the Wild, you could easily fast travel to all the different shrines at any time. I don't know if I would really want that, but like if it was limited, I think because I still think there should be the challenge of going and backtracking. Yeah, if the map's huge, well, map's huge, bro. Mission's long. You gotta do what you gotta do, man. I don't know. That's
Yeah.
at least for me, but I do think because the intent behind it is to streamline the experience, not make it feel as clunky. Maybe it will just make Samus move faster. I think that's one thing that should happen. Is Samus should just be moving her base walk speed should be faster. She should be able to run more before she can like shine spark or whatever and completely run at full speed. I would like to have her move a little faster. But I think some people might be like, "Oh, she's moving too fast. You'll kind of like move through the game a little more, or maybe it would be less exploration."
That's kind of where I would fall on. Is like
I don't know. I
moving fast is great towards like the latter part of the game.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Yeah, I mean, it's just something I was thinking about too. I think I think she should be just not. We're talking about 2D Metroid, but I think that's a thought I have more for a Metroid Prime series. I think she should walk faster in those games. 2D, I don't really mind it. But speaking of running fast and all of that, one thing I do think would be really cool that they could add to these games would be to have like a boss rush mode and like a mission mode almost, where like sections of the game maybe, or like certain like events could be like portioned up that could be like specifically ran in like a sequence. But more so, I think features like that for speedrunners specifically would be really cool. Maybe like parts of the game you can get like high scores on, more specifically than just like the whole game, or like a boss rush mode you could run through, or like certain kind of missions or something. I don't know. I think just to offer something in that kind of way would be really cool, because the gameplay kind of already leads to that kind of genre of player, and I think giving them more features, more things to do, rather than just like play the campaign of the game, would be cool. I don't know your thoughts on that.
Like I think that'd be cool. I think it'd be cool as like an extra. Like
Yeah.
when you click on the menu and like there's extras, you could do boss rush mode. That would be cool. Actually, here's another thing that I think like 2D Metroid should do, and this will probably never happen because Nintendo would obviously be publishing this.
Mhm.
But like when you play Axiom Verge, which is a absolutely fantastic Super Metroid spiritual sequel,
Mhm.
when you play Axiom Verge, there's a option that it's basically like speedrun mode,
Mhm.
and you can go in and like do the game as fast as you can, and you
Yeah.
can lean into that. I think that Super Metroid and 2D Metroid in particular has just always been such a hotbed for speedrunning.
Yeah.
I'm not a speedrunner myself, but like lean into that. Like you have this big community that is passionate about it. I think that you should do like maybe a new 2D Metroid can like really just kind of reward the really good players.
Mhm.
I always think that it's cool when like you see speed runs and like people aren't using glitches, because like I think a glitch, while cool, like it's kind of like, okay, well, like anybody can do that.
Well,
Probably,
whoa,
I mean, I probably couldn't do that.
whoa. Anybody
But
could do
yeah,
that.
like you know what I mean though. Like there's a difference I feel like between sequence breaking because you're really skilled and like exploiting a glitch. Maybe that's, I don't know, maybe that's not right. It probably isn't, but like lean into that, and like you can have certain sections of the game that like if you're a really skilled player and you can sequence break it, then you can post like your time or something
Yeah.
like that. Maybe you can do speed run mode. I think that would
I
be
100%
pretty
agree.
cool to have, and it would definitely augment the replayability of any 2D Metroid.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I 100% agree. Yeah, lean into it more. Those are the type of people that are going to be playing your game as well. And yeah, it gives it more replayability. And I feel like with the 2D Metroids, that is kind of where they do feel a bit limited. Is you play the campaign, and that's it, really. You might play it again for hard mode, and you play the game because you like it. But
Mhm.
I really do think like extra features, extra content like that, whether it's boss rush mode, it's super speed run mode, whatever it is, um, I think is very important for the 2D Metroid games to have. And I think that is an evolution in and of itself, is having more of that stuff overall, because one thing that Metroid games, and I think 2D kind of games, like 2D adventure games overall, do have, what they lack, is that like lack of extra content. They kind of just have that one campaign, and that's really it, with a lot of games. And then now you're pointing out newer games that are coming out, like you said, Axiom Verge. It has that speedrunning mode. That's like the evolution. Those are new kind of games coming out that add to the base core 2D adventure kind of game we've been getting for decades, right? So I definitely think that's important, and I would love to see that kind of stuff for the new Metroid.
Yeah, just like lots of cool extra stuff.
Exactly.
We've kind of kicked around this idea before, and I guess we'll talk about it now. I think that like perhaps one thing that a new 2D Metroid, and I think specifically 2D Metroid, although Prime could do this too, it's just they would do it in a different way, is rethink the conventions of how beams work.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you'd mentioned before about like should beams stack, should they be different, etc. etc. I think that like I in 2D Metroid, I kind of like that the beams stack on top of each other and you can like change your beam, but maybe like go even further. Like you kind of can almost like customize your beam. And I know we've kind of danced around this subject before, but I was kind of thinking, and I was like, well, man, maybe now would be a good time to dive into it. Like if you can like almost rework the way that your beam works, like maybe I don't know. Maybe you can mix and match like the way that different beams stack to give you different beam properties or stuff like
Yes,
that. Like
absolutely.
imagine if you had 10 beams and like if you could stack, let's say 3 of them at a time. And so you stack them and then they create this different combination and you have like, I don't know, like 60 beam combinations or something like that. I think that could actually be really cool.
No, absolutely. I think that should happen for both 2D and 3D Metroid. There should be a larger plethora of beams, be able to, stack and switch them and combine them for different strategical situations. That's why I like being able to switch between beams because it forces you to it's not crazy strategy in Metroid Prime switching between beams or anything. I mean, there's an enemy that literally tells you which, beam to use.
I am red.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
oh, red one. I wonder which one I got to use. But that's like the concept that if they really played with it and fleshed it out more, could do a lot with. Yeah, you should absolutely be able to switch around with your beams a little bit. I think the suits should operate the same way as well in both 2D and 3D Metroid. Like, you should be able to customize your suit a little bit, upgrade it in a certain way, mix and match stuff. That's a huge evolution, I think, for Metroid, because the collection of items and whatnot is going to always be in the games, and that's always going to be a thing, and that's really not going to change. But if you're able to pick up items that augment your suit in a different way, or give you a way to look unique and make Samus look unique in a way while you're playing it, and give a little personality of your own to it, I think that would really go farther to make it feel more modern. Because these days, I mean, what game can you play? At least I can't think of a game I play that doesn't have any kind of customization in it. I'm playing Valorant right now. I can customize my guns. I'm playing Animal Crossing and customize my whole damn island. I'm playing Rocket League and customize my whole car. I'm playing all these different games. Even in Breath of the Wild, you can customize what you're wearing and all mix and match different pieces of clothing and armor and whatnot. And all of that. I think absolutely Metroid should be able to do that, and really should, because there are so many cool things, and we've already seen that happen in previous games. Metroid Prime, for example, has like the beam missile combos, right? Which isn't like a crazy like mixture or anything. It's not like something you have to think about, but it's cool because like, oh wow, like it was a cool thing. Like, oh, I got this access to a new weapon that like absolutely shreds my missile count, but it's sick for 5 seconds, I always thought that was really cool, and it gave you access to these unique guns that had niche uses. But when you used them, they looked awesome, and they were really strong and powerful, and the amount of ammo they used showed you, like, wow, this drains a lot. This must really be, pumping it into them, really giving them lead. So, yes, I 100% think that should be in 2D. I think with 2D, in fact, they should go further and really give Samus access to different kinds of weapons almost, I think. I would love to see not just beams, maybe give her like maybe like different kinds of beams instead of just like the standard kind of beam. I don't know, maybe like more sprays or different kinds of sprays, maybe like a sniper or something like that, like to really I don't know, like just give the player the means to approach how they get into the game their own way, right? While still being true to the story and the character and all that, because I really don't think it's out of like character or anything for any one person in Metroid to like augment or customize anything, right? So I don't know, I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm down with like a sniper or something like that.
Well,
Although I do think that you could be cool, like if you had certain abilities maybe that were tied to your ship that you could call on.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Like an airstrike.
I think that there's a lot of room for like different kinds of bombs actually. Like,
yes.
Like I was kind of talking earlier, like maybe you can have like ice bombs or something like that, or an ice power bomb, or like a plasma bomb, or like something like that, like something to mix and match your weaponry with. I agree with you in the sense of like, I think that being able to create weapons, or like having a larger pool of weaponry or weapon combinations, is like a really natural evolution. Because like really in 2D Metroid, your combat is, or traditionally has been, fairly simple. You have your beams, your charge shot, your missile, and that's kind of it. Maybe your screw attack once you get that. And beyond that, it's like it's basically just aiming those weapons. But if you can customize what weaponry you're fighting with, that opens up a lot of different potential to defeat bosses in maybe different ways or something like that. And might be again kind of cool on that speedrunning front as well. I kind of like the idea of being able to customize your suit. Like I went back and forth on this because I was like, okay, well, getting a new suit in Metroid is so important, and it like once you get it, it's such a big deal. So like I don't know if I'd want to take away from that by designing my suit to be any color. But I mean, at the same time, it's like I think that you could probably come up with gameplay to justify that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
100%.
maybe you're augmenting the helmet of your suit, and it's like, this is gonna decrease damage by 20%, and by the way, your helmet is black, or something like that. Kind of like how Breath of the Wild does, where they have like the different outfits, and if you're wearing the entire same outfit, you get like a bonus. Like maybe they have different kind of helmets, maybe they have different armor plates, different leg plates, etc., etc. I think I would be down for that, and I think that 2D Metroid in particular is the place to do that because like you just don't get the same kind of like you're always going to be looking at Samus in 2D
Yeah.
Metroid, whereas in Metroid Prime you're only looking at her really in cutscenes,
Yes, very true.
beyond like the reflection in your visor. So I went back and forth, and I was thinking, I'm like, okay, I think that you could justify this, and I think that it would be cool. Shout out, by the way, to Metroid Prime Federation Force for allowing you to customize your suit
Yeah.
in that game.
There you go. See, it's already it's not unprecedented or anything. And I do agree that 2D Metroid is a good place to do it because you can always see it. I was thinking not even maybe not being able to change the color, right? Because I do think especially in 2D, like it's important to be able to like distinguish and always know like what you're looking at, and like having the color for your suit be consistent. I think at least per upgrade is important. But yeah, maybe being able to like add like extra armor plating or a flashlight or like gills or like warm, I don't know, heat things that like make sure the suit doesn't freeze up, stuff like that to like augment it slightly, right? And like change it, like you can only have like one or two of those things applied, but you might have like 20 options, right? So like your suit might look a little different than someone else's because you have 3 or 4 different things on that they're not using, but like maybe you can't change the color or something like that. So it's still like, Samus wouldn't be like going around like, all right, well, wait, I picked up the suit, but I want to make it purple real quick. So, because that probably wouldn't happen in Metroid, but it would make sense for her to sit down and be like, well, how do I actually want my suit to be structured going into this certain fight? At least I would think so. I think a smart person would do that. So I don't know. I do think that, yeah, they shouldn't go like crazy with it, but I do think there is some room to give a little bit of flexibility in terms of people want to approach like what they're wearing. In terms of weapons, yeah, maybe not something like, I don't know. I thought a sniper would be cool because I was thinking like ricochets. Maybe you could like do something like ricochet and like complete puzzles or like get enemies from like certain angles. I think like not going too far, again, like not going crazy with different kinds of combinations, but at the same time I do think like having a little more variation from your standard beams or wave beam or whatever it
Yeah.
is would be nice to like allow you, because like you said, at the end of the day it really just comes down to like picking whatever beam you have or whatever it is and just aiming, right? And I think if you had stuff with different properties like, oh, this ricochets or this splatters or this does that, this does this, yeah, it would be cool to see how people could work with that, because I'd love to see the creativity of players too, in addition to how the story plays out.
100%, yeah. And hey, by the way, the gravity suit was purple. That's a sick suit.
Well, yeah, no,
Nothing
yeah,
wrong
but
with
that's
the
the thing.
purple
But
suit.
no, I said purple because I love purple. I'm a Ridley guy. I love purple.
You're well,
That's what I'm
Ridley.
saying.
Yeah.
But the gravity suit is purple already. She doesn't pick it up and it's yellow, and she's like, well, I think this would look better purple. It already is purple, right? That being said, I personally would forego the story logicness of it and be like, screw it, I want to customize my suit colors, but to be more realistic, and I think how it would be better applied, I do think like let's keep the upgrades whatever color they're going to be, so that way it's more distinguishable, it's a little more consistent that way, but let players augment certain smaller parts of it to give it their own unique feel.
Assuming too that this next 2D Metroid is the long-awaited sequel to Metroid Fusion. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. At the end of Fusion, like we're basically stuck in the Fusion suit. Like that's where Samus is at. The suit is saving her life. So like I think we have some room to play too with that suit and maybe customizing it a little bit, because it's not necessarily like the previous suits that we've had before.
Yeah, I don't think they ever got an official name for the Omega suit, I guess, right? She absorbs the SAX, and yeah, you could definitely do something with that because the SAX like is this kind of amorphous thing that she absorbs. Maybe she'll be able to like amorphously change her suit. Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. I actually never really thought about that. That's a good point.
Neither did I actually till right now.
That's actually
cool.
a good idea. They should do that. I'd be down for that.
So here's something that I think that would be not necessarily an evolution, but like something that I think like the next 2D Metroid should really, really lean into, and that's like shine sparking and making use of that function. Because like really, in every Metroid game, like you don't necessarily use it a whole lot. Like you kind of use it, but peripherally, like on the
Like a
sides.
couple
Like
times.
you're using it really if you want to get like 100% items or something like that, like you're not necessarily using it because you need to use it in story. I think like, so that is something that you can only do in 2D Metroid. And I think like if we're going to continue and have like classic Metroid and Metroid Prime, classic Metroid needs to focus on the stuff that only it can do. Like, we've seen the screw attack in Metroid Prime and it sucked. Like, so let's just keep that over and let's do that wonderfully in 2D Metroid. Same thing with shine sparking. Like, let's just take those strengths that we had in 2D and really lean into them and make them, like, if you want to feel like an invincible god slicing through all these enemies with the screw attack, you got to play classic 2D Metroid to do that. Versus kind of like we said on our Metroid Prime 4 episode, like kind of do it half-assedly in the 3D games. So I think that you got to lean into like your strengths and really like make them part of the experience rather than like just like you can kind of learn how to shine spark if you want to get 100% of the items, but if you don't want to learn how to shine spark, that's no big deal either. I say like go for it, like make it a thing, like because it takes such skill to do that. And I think like classic 2D Metroid, in order to succeed, it's got to be just like this fantastic game. And I think that like you want to attract skilled players to that. So that's something that I think that it should kind of like lean into and just emphasize, I guess. What do you think about that?
I definitely agree with that. I love the shine spark. I think it's really cool. It's one of my favorite things Samus can do, and it's like a scary thing she can do. So I think she should be able to like destroy more environments with it. I would love to see like more destructible stuff with her just being able to just absolutely demolish stuff. I think it's really cool, and I do agree. Yeah, what like each Metroid does specifically should be leaned more into, which is why I've always felt that like the grapple beam, for example, should be used way more in the Metroid Prime games. And like in Metroid Prime 3, they did a little more with it. But with 2D, yeah, the Shine Spark, the Screw Attack are make a lot more sense in that 2D plane. They should really play more with it because like the Screw Attack too has really always been an item that's kind of like that very late game, like, oh wow, I'm like overpowered
Yeah.
already. I'm just gonna literally slice through you like melted butter and with a hot knife. Like, at that point it's almost like, it's a little much when you have it, and then when you do have it, it's crazy. I would like to see them kind of play with that more and make it like integrate it maybe earlier into the game, or I don't know, change it up, because I feel like it's used the same every single time. And I feel the same way with the Shine Spark as well. Like, yeah, if you're not going for it 100%, you kind of use it in like a few segments of the game, and only really those segments, and they aren't really anything huge. So yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I kind of touched on that earlier, where I would like to see them do more with what Samus can do outside of just shooting her arm cannon, right? And I think that's why, stuff like the melee counter, using more with the Shine Spark and the Screw Attack, have a place in more modern Metroid games, because, again, it makes the gameplay a little more diverse and more dynamic. And Samus is capable of more than just shooting her arm cannon anyway. I would love to see, like, maybe she could hold multiple charges of the Shine Spark, maybe than just one. She could hold, like, multiple.
Oh, that would be
I think that'd be cool, like,
cool.
maybe up to, like, 2 or 3 or something like that, so she could do, like, a little combo of them.
Oh man, that would be
Maybe
awesome. You could just do so much puzzles.
exactly.
Like the world is open if you have that.
Exactly. That alone would open up so many doors. So stuff like that, 100% think they should do more. I think that'd be really cool. So yeah, I agree.
Oh man, that is awesome. I love that idea. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, that's great. Here's kind of an idea that I had, and I don't know. Maybe we should even save it and talk about it long form. You can tell me after I kind of pitch you on my idea here.
Okay.
But I was watching the Zelda Dungeon mini marathon the other day, and I was doing commentary for Legend of Zelda: A Link Between
Okay.
Worlds, and in that game, you have access to every item immediately right off the bat. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, what if Metroid were to do something similar? Let's say that in your ship you have all of your different beams, you have your grapple, you have your space jump, you have all this stuff immediately, but the catch is that maybe, I don't know, maybe your suit is messed up and you can only hold like one or two of those at a time. So like you kind of got to pick and choose which one you want to go to. You can like equip, let's say, two of them to start, and like you can change and equip and whatever. And like when you defeat a boss, instead of getting one of these power ups, you get like an extra item slot or something along those lines. So like eventually you can have your full roster, but you kind of got to be a little bit more strategic about what you're bringing and where you're bringing it. I thought that might be kind of cool. What do you think?
At first thought, I'm not the biggest fan of that. For one thing, I don't really like the thought of like, oh, her suit is randomly malfunctioning, so that way this makes sense, because that's like one thing that happens in other Metroid games. The difference though is that when that happens, she does have to start over from scratch and build her way up. This is kind of like, it's like in Other M where Adam doesn't let you use your suit stuff, or like let you run through a volcano even though you have the ability to use the Varia suit and he's just not letting you. That seems like the kind of the same thing where it's like, oh, you do have these features, but the Wi-Fi is not good here, so I can't reach the ship. Oh, sorry, dude. Like,
Well, hold on. There's not a whole lot of difference between that and like the Emperor Ing stealing all your abilities.
Okay, but the difference
the
there is that once they're stolen, it's not like the Ings are. It's not like they like deactivated them and she can't only access one or two at a time. You know, like they took all of them and she literally doesn't have them. So in story, it makes a lot more sense. Like she was literally like same thing in the beginning of Metroid Prime. Like her suit gets electrocuted. It's not like, oh, now I can only use my grapple beam and my power bomb if I choose for the next. You know, it's she lost everything and she has to start from scratch. So that I'm okay with, because in the story, it's like a big major event that gets things going. Honestly, I think if we're starting from Metroid Fusion, I don't think she should lose anything at all. She should be super powered at the beginning of the game, I think. Make everything else way stronger and make her have to upgrade all of what she already has. I would love to see Samus start at full power and just run and have crazier strong enemies and have crazier upgrades she could have, and upgrade what she already has instead of, you know, the same, oh, Samus starting a new game. I wonder how long I'm going to have these missiles for. It's only going to be 10 minutes, I'm sure, before I lose them. You know, I would love a different approach to that, because at the end of the day, like, I think that is another evolution that Metroid could really go through, is not having the same old like lack of access to abilities. I would love for her to have what she has, give her base, you know, let her have access stuff, and then give her new stuff or upgrades to new things that we haven't seen before. I don't want to have to lose all this stuff to get access to it again. It feels old, I guess, you know? Like if I were to play the new Metroid game and like I got into it and I played the first mission, and then like all of a sudden I lost my stuff, but then my ship's following me around and say, well, you can use grapple beam and your missiles, it's all good. But that's only these two. You can only use two at a time. I'd be like, screw this, man. Let me just attack the world, you know? And I feel like Metroid Prime 5 is the perfect place to do that, because it's like a big huge boulder at the edge of a cliff. That's literally what it is. I want to see everything just explode, and I would hate to like the game to be slowed down, because I'm into this crazy adventure that's been set up by the end of Metroid Fusion. But oh no, Samus lost everything. We got to collect everything again. If she's gonna collect stuff, at least let me have access to all of her stuff. Let her have that freedom. And if you're going to bar me from later parts of the game like usual Metroid games do, make it so that I have to get new stuff or new upgrades to things I have, rather than recollecting the stuff I've already gotten in the previous however many games. That's how I feel.
I hate that you poo-pooed my idea like that, but I'm not going to argue with you for now. I'm going to save that for a full episode, and I'm gonna make you see the merits of this idea. You know what?
All right, I'm with you.
You do have a point. Like if you're rethinking the conventions of 2D Metroid, and really Metroid in general, it is kind of tired to have, like, you have to collect missiles, or you have to collect the bombs, or you have to collect the morph ball. So I would probably be down if you told me, like, okay, we're going to start off with missiles, the grapple beam, the morph ball, bombs, like all that kind of like the standard stuff, and like maybe you just need all these different beams or like the specialized bombs or stuff like that. I would be fully down with that idea. Let's think about it
like specifically, like at the end of Metroid Fusion, what does she have? Like she has pretty much, like, she has her screw attack, she has shine spark, she has the fusion missiles, she has all her beams, all that stuff. But like she could still get different kinds of visors. She could get new kinds of missiles. She could get new kinds of bombs, like you were talking about. More charges on her shine spark and all that, right? She doesn't have to lose anything, but there's still so much more room for her to get stuff at the end of story. At the end of the story of Metroid Fusion and onward. So that's how I'm thinking of it, because I 100% am with you. I don't want to have to recollect my grapple beam, re-get my missiles, re-get basic bombs, not even power bombs, basic bombs. Stuff like that I think is really, like, I think we're beyond that in terms of Metroid games. Start off Samus at her strength she is at the end of Metroid Fusion, and get to even higher heights, and, you know, really, like, I think things need to be ramped up a little bit. I think we need to turn it up to 11, right? It goes to 10. Let's turn it up to 11. I think that's where we need to be right now.
You know, I think the only one that I would have a problem with is if Samus started the game with a space jump or the screw attack, that wouldn't feel right to me, because that's traditionally it's just like that's like your final weapon, like
But
your
we're talking
final
about
upgrade, right?
evolution right
Like
here. We're not talking about tradition. We're talking about evolution. You know what I'm
I
saying?
know
Like,
it's
think about this.
it's just it's a fine
You start
line.
your screw attack, but maybe you get to a planet where it doesn't matter. You can't screw attack stuff, or like there's only specific enemies you can screw attack with, stuff like that. I feel like that's what I would love to see. Let's start with the basic screw attack. How can you make it evolve? Maybe I get a bigger screw attack later, or a faster one, or one that goes through specific enemies or certain walls or something like that. I'd rather them iterate on it than take it away from me just to give it back to me in the same fashion I already had it. You know what I'm saying? Because I think that's kind of what we end
No,
up
I
getting.
get what you're saying. I just
Like
something. It's actually not the screw attack. It's the space jump and just being able to like continually jump and stuff like. I
okay.
think that would be
I
weird, especially at like the start of a new game.
all right.
If you can just literally jump anywhere you want.
all right. I do think they could come up with a way to make it not crazy like dumb in the beginning, just having access to everything. But I'm with you there. Maybe like 'cause
Yeah.
I'm okay if they maybe like limited some things, but I just don't want the whole short circuit of losing everything or being able to access only one or two things. But yes, like
Yeah, yeah, I'm
if
with
it was
you.
like I can't space jump, but I have okay, that's fair. That's reasonable. I'm with you there.
I think that like I mean really like if you have the proper story you can explain anything,
Right,
right?
yeah.
So like you can really make it what you want. But yeah, I don't know. I get what you're saying. That the only thing I don't know that seems sacrilegious to me to start with the screw attack and space
But how
jump.
sick would it be,
Missiles,
man?
grapple.
How sick though. Like imagine, like I think of it this way: you have your whole toolkit, right? And it's like you feel like you're at the end of a game, right? And you're super powered and you're destroying stuff, and you're like, wow, like this is great. I'm destroying, like I'm so strong. And then the game hits you with like a crazy strong enemy or something that like completely like flips you like upside down, right? And now you're like, wow, what I think is an end game toolkit for Samus isn't even good against this thing. What do I need to get to beat it? That's what excites me for a new Metroid game. Not like, damn, I have to get the screw attack at the end of the game again. You know, if they change the screw attack to like a beginning of the game kind of item, I like, wow, I would love to see how they could approach it that way. It would completely retool how I think about this item in Metroid overall. That's the kind of thing I think Metroid needs. Though I am with you that yeah, it is kind of hard to think of it that way. I think that's exactly what Metroid should do to like completely just let's just make Samus like what she is in the beginning or the end of Metroid Fusion and iterate on what they have.
All right. Okay. Well, I ain't arguing. You know, if you would have told me that there would be no dungeons in Breath of the Wild or like these kind of four flimsy dungeons, I would have also said that was sacrilege. But you know, I think that ended up pretty good. So obviously, we're kind of anticipating that potentially the next Metroid is going to be the sequel to Fusion. I think that's probably the direction that it should go. We had written down here, should the sequel to Fusion be 2D or 3D? I think absolutely needs to be 2D and like a direct continuation of that. I think there's like a lot of room that you could set the story inside of, let's say, I don't know, the Galactic Federation headquarters or something like that, and it's this huge labyrinth or whatever. There's lots of room that you could go, but I definitely think that it should be 2D and like a continuation of that story for sure.
Oh yeah.
Your thoughts?
I mean, I have so many story ideas. So I mean, that could be its own episode. I could go on and on about all the things I would.
And that will be
yeah,
its own episode actually.
I'd love to talk about what I think they should do story wise because that's something I've loved to talk about for the past 20 years, however long it's been, right?
God,
20
years.
18, 19 years, whatever it is, right? So, yeah, I do think that the story would be really cool. But, you know, part of me, because I love Metroid Prime, and there's always going to be that, like, selfish part of me that's like, oh, it would be beautiful in 3D, though. It would be so amazing. I would love to see these characters and plot points come to life in 3D. But I think they could still do that with really like well done just cinematics and cutscenes and stuff like that in a 2D space, and especially on the Switch, which really makes everything pop and look good. Yeah, I do think it should be on
100%. I don't think that 3D is inherently better looking than 2D. If you do 2D correctly, it can look.
I think for
fantastic.
me, it's more like 3D will always be more immersive to me, and I would be like, wow, I'd love to see where the story goes through like my own eyes in that kind of way. But again, that's like the smaller vocal minority selfish part of me. I do think overall, yeah, it should be in 2D. Give it, but they really got to go all in on it. They got to like make it look serious.
100%.
Like
they have to make it look
really
fantastic.
good and awesome. And I think they can do that. I think they probably know that's where they got to go with it. I think it's possible too, and especially on the Switch, that's where they would do it. So yeah, at the end of the day, it's definitely going to be 2D. I really don't see them ever like. I just fundamentally don't think they'll ever like kind of like cross the streams in that kind of way. I don't think they'll really make like the mainline series like an FPS. They kind of Other M kind of teeter. We don't like to talk about that one. But like the main 2D games kind of stick 2D and the 3D stay 3D, and I think that's how it should probably stay. That being said, again, I'd love to see the story really in that immersive FPS kind of way because that's the kind of game I really like too. But yes, 2D Metroid. I think there's so many things they could do in like a 2.5D like gameplay thing. In terms of how it would look like in game, and then like they could do some really cool cinematics both in and out of game as well. So yeah, I think we're both on the consensus that it should be 2D, and that's where it should stay. At least that part of the story. So
Yeah, I agree. It's for me I'm immersed if it's a good story and it's like atmospheric. So to me, it doesn't matter if it's 2D, 3D, 2.5D, 4D.
Well, it's not like a 2D game won't immerse me because I'm 100%. I mean,
yeah.
Metroid Fusion I think is very immersive. I'm sucked into that game. I love when I play that game. I guess it's more of like it's just a different. I just part of me was like, damn, I would love to like traverse this from a first person perspective as well. I wish we could get Metroid games that could be played 2D and FPS. Like I could switch back. Like I could like if you're playing like
yeah, it's called Other M.
No, not that one. Not no, done right. Like how like if you play like
hey, be careful what you wish for, buddy.
It's Other M, man. It's not a bad. It wasn't a bad idea.
Other M too.
It wasn't a bad idea. It kind of was, but it wasn't like they could have done it better. It was a bad idea. But I was thinking like how if you play like the Halo 1 anniversary, you could switch between like the old graphics and the new graphics and stuff. Like just give me a button where I could, or like Paper Mario or Super Paper Mario, you could go from like 2D to like the 3D. I don't know. That's a dream that'll never happen. But yeah, I think the right decision. I'm sure everyone would agree. Keep it 2D, and I think there's a lot of great stuff they could do with that.
I 100% agree, and I think that we came up with a lot of great stuff that 2D Metroid could do to kind of continue its evolution and really, be once again the flag bearer, the standard bearer for 2D Metroidvania style games. Dak, I think we came up with some pretty good stuff. I think I say this at the end of most shows, but man, Nintendo should hire us.
Hey man, I think it could happen. I think one day we'll be directing a great Metroid game or something cool, and I can't wait for that because I mean, so far, if someone listened to all the ideas on here, I think they'd have one hell of a Metroid game. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I am 100% in agreement. We hoped that you guys thought that this was one hell of a Metroid show. Of course, we are going to be delivering a bonus show answering all of your guys' Metroid questions. So by the time you're listening to this, you probably have about a day to get your Metroid questions in. Hit us up over on Twitter at Omega Metroid Pod, or individually, I am at Spiteri316 and Dak is at the Rapture _. That's going to do it for us for this week. It felt great to talk about some 2D Metroid, and I hope that we see some of these ideas implemented sooner rather than later. In the meantime, we want you to check us out over on Podbean, iTunes, and Spotify now. Like, subscribe, tell a Metroid fan in your life where they can get their Metroid fix. We're doing it every week, so we got different ideas every week. If you got like suggestions for show topics, man, let us know, because we got a lot of good ideas from this fan questionnaire that we're gonna implement into the show. So again, make sure that you hit us up. That's it for this week. We hope that all you guys out there are staying safe, staying healthy, and Dak, we will see everybody next week. It was good chatting with you.
You too, man. See everyone next time.